often counted as the #1 of the most haunted castle in Great Britain. Her Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress, the Tower of London, more commonly known as the Tower of London and historically simply as the Tower, is an historic monument in central London, England, on the north bank of the River Thames. It is located within the London Borough of Tower Hamlets and is separated from the eastern edge of the City of London by the open space known as Tower Hill. The Tower of London is often identified with the White Tower, the original Stark Square fortress built by William the Conqueror in 1078. However, the tower as a whole is a complex of several buildings set within two parallel rings of defensive walls and a moat. The tower's primary function was a fortress, a royal palace, and a prison, particularly for high-status and royal prisoners, such as the princes in the tower and the future Queen Elizabeth I. This last use has led to the phrase "sent to the tower," meaning imprisoned. It has also served as a place of execution and torture, an armory, a treasury, a zoo, a mint, a public records office, an observatory, and since 1303, the home of the crown jewels of the United Kingdom. Inside the torture chambers of the tower, various implements of torture were used, such as the scavenger's daughter, a kind of compression device, and the rack, also known as the Duke of Exeter's daughter. Prisoners in the Tower of London was used as a prison for those of high rank and for religious dissidents. Those of high rank, including prisoners of royal status, were housed in relative comfort. Religious dissidents were, however, much more severely treated and were often tortured. The first prisoner was Ranulph Lombard in 1100, who, as Bishop of Durham, was found guilty of extortion. Ironically, he had himself been responsible for various improvements to the design of the tower after the first architect Gundulf moved back to Rochester. He escaped from the White Tower by climbing down a rope, which had been smuggled into his cell in a wine casket. Other prisoners include John Balliol, King of Scotland; David II, King of Scotland; John II, King of France; Charles I de Valois, Duke of Orleans, was one of the many French noblemen wounded in the Battle of Agincourt on October 25, 1415. Captured and taken to England as a hostage, he would remain in captivity for the next 25 years, at various places including Wallingford Castle. Charles is now remembered as an accomplished poet owing to the more than 500 extant poems he produced, most written when a prisoner. Henry VI of England was imprisoned in the Tower, where he was murdered on the 21st of May 1471. Popular legend has accused Richard, Duke of Gloucester, of his murder. Each year on the anniversary of Henry VI's death, the provosts of Eton College and King's College, Cambridge, lay roses and lilies on the altar which now stands where he died. Margaret of Anjou, wife of the above Sir William de la Pole, a distant relative of King Henry VIII, he was incarcerated at the Tower for 37 years, 1502 to 1539, for allegedly plotting against Henry VII, thus becoming the longest-serving prisoner here. Queen Elizabeth I, imprisoned for 2 months in 1554 for her alleged involvement in Wyatt's rebellion. John Gerard, S.J. 1564 to 1637, an English Jesuit priest, operating undercover during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, when Catholics were being persecuted. He was captured and tortured and incarcerated in the Salt Tower before making a daring escape by rope across the moat. Sir Walter Raleigh spent 13 years, 1603 to 1616, imprisoned at the Tower, but was able to live in relative comfort in the Bloody Tower with his wife and 2 children. For some of the time he even grew tobacco on Tower Green, just outside his apartment. Here he wrote the history of the world. Niall Garve O'Donnell, Irish nobleman, ironically a one-time ally of the English against his cousin, Red Hugh O'Donnell. Guy Fawkes, famous for his part in the Gunpowder Plot, was brought to the Tower to be interrogated by a council of the King's ministers. However, he was not executed here. When he confessed, he was sentenced to be hanged, drawn and quartered in the Old Palace Yard at Westminster. However, he escaped his fate by jumping off the scaffold at the gallows, which in turn broke his neck, killing him. Johann Anders J. Gurn, a Swedish officer from Finland, Lord Edward Fitzgerald's friend, participating in the Irish independence movement. Spent 2 years in the Tower 1799 to 1801, but was released because of Russian interests. Lord George Gordon, instigator of the Gordon riots in 1780, spent 6 months in the Tower while awaiting trial on the charge of high treason. Rudolf Hess, deputy leader of the German Nazi Party, the last state prisoner to be held in the Tower, in May 1941. The Kray twins, the last prisoners to be held, for a few days in 1952, for failing to report for national service.